presidential candidate for the United States.
Thank you. I got a great history lesson this morning. It was good to be here early. We walked the streets up and down here talking about each house, where they were built, the community, and it's like any other community in the world. You know, you take pride in where you live, and it was wonderful to learn about it. Chris, wherever you are, thank you. She's been teaching middle school for, is it the whole 32 years. I know it takes a special person to teach middle school for 2 years, much less for 32 years. So, as a former school superintendent, I used to be the superintendent at Denver Public Schools. I just want to applaud you for that work. I'm not going to go on too long at the outset because I'd really like to spend the time in a conversation with all of you, taking whatever questions or criticisms or thoughts you have about any topics that are on your mind. I encourage you to ask me questions you might not ask another politician because you're worried you might hurt their feelings. You will not hurt my feelings because, as I said, I was an urban school superintendent for 5 years. It was all beaten out of me a long, long time ago. I also want to thank Mike, who helped set this whole thing up for us today. And I'm so lucky today because my wife, Susan Daggett, who's here as a public interest environmental lawyer and teaches at the University of Denver Law School, and my daughters, Helena and Ann. And we have one more daughter, but she's in college, and she claims she wishes she were here. That's actually true or not.
I would say finals week, right?
I just a word about myself. I spent most of my life outside of politics. I've been in the Senate for the last 10 years. Before that, I was a lawyer and then in business and running the Denver Public Schools. It was a very short career, but it's something about how something about our schools and I don't think others in Washington really have had that to do. And then over the last 10 years, and pretty good, I started getting stuff done from actually ending the left behind with Laura Alexander, who is the chair of the Health Education Labor Committee. He's Republican, but very generous to me. He knew that I was a former superintendent. He had been George Bush's education secretary, and we worked together on that bill, which passed with a huge majority out of the Senate and out of the House. The immigration bill in 2013, we began making the Senate. I was one of the 4 Democrats who wrote that bill, got 68 votes in the Senate, and failed in the House because of the so-called Hastert rule, which is one of those things in the Congress that creates the tyranny of a minority over everybody else. Worked with Richard Burr, also a Republican from North Carolina, on something called breakthrough therapies to get drugs more quickly to the American people for life-saving therapy. That was what we thought we'd get one drug approved a year, and to this day, I think there's been about 130 approved. So I've learned something about how you get stuff done, but I've also learned why the most important stuff never gets done in Washington. And it is mostly because we have been tyrannized over the last 10 years by this group called the Freedom Caucus, which your friend Steve King is a leading member of. These guys, I don't think explaining what they're like.
Interesting concept.
They believe there's only one way to be an American. They believe there's only one way to think about the country. They believe there's only one way to exercise your freedom of speech. And I don't actually, and they think they have a monopoly on wisdom and everybody else is wrong. Yeah. The fact that they have been backed over the last 10 years by Fox News in the way they have, which has now become sort of an organ of the state for our friend Donald Trump, and the fact that they've been able to be backed by these billionaires like the Koch brothers because of the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court has made it very hard for us to move the country forward. You know, even when Barack Obama was president for the last 6 years, impossible for him to get anything through the legislature. So my point in saying all of that is that this can't be just about beating Donald Trump. That is an essential thing that we have to do. I represent a state that's the 3rd Democratic, 3rd Republican, and a 3rd Independent. And let me tell you something. He does not represent Republicans in the state of Colorado, much less Independents or Democrats. But that is only step 1. Step 2 is figuring out how to actually govern this country again, how to actually sustain this exercise in self-government for another 230 years, as it has been until now. And there is a lot of degradation going on back there of our institutions. There are a lot of threats to things that our parents and grandparents took for granted in terms of how you pursue this exercise in self-government. But that's why I'm running for president, because I think that really is a critical question for us. And one of the major threats for all of that, is the fact that we have so little economic mobility in the United States of America today. You know, and for the last 40 years, 90% of Americans really haven't seen much of a pay raise. And every time the economy grows, with economists here, all the growth accrues to the people at the very top. None of it is accrued to the rest of America. So what is it like living in America? It means that you can't afford child care, families can't afford health care, families can't afford higher education, families can't afford early childhood education. And the result of all of that means you can't afford to live a middle class life. You can't afford to save. You can't afford to leave something for the generations coming after you. I don't accept that that's a permanent state of things. There are people who say it is. You know, that we now have a worldwide market for labor. Technology has bumped people out of the workplace. The Chinese are taking us over. In 15 minutes, Steve and I stood on that corner this morning talking about what kinds of things you could do. He was talking, I was listening. I was to revitalize, the downtown here, and that's what we should be thinking about all over the country. Is what are the things we can do to generate economic growth at the local level that can actually put people in a position again to fulfill their aspirations for a middle class life. And I've got some ideas about that we can talk about. But it would be a mistake to think that's just about economics. We have an American history teacher here. This also is about our democracy itself, as I was saying earlier. You cannot expect a democracy to do well if the vast majority of wealth that's accrued goes to the people at the very top and no one else can get ahead. That creates a division in the society that's very hard to navigate. And democracies in the past, going all the way back to ancient Rome, have not succeeded when that's happened. I think we're at that point. So you may have noticed that I didn't talk a lot about Donald Trump today. I will. I'm happy to. I'm happy to take any questions or anything. But I really view him very much as a symptom of our problems, even though he's made matters much worse. But to think that he's the cause of all of our problems, I think is to misunderstand how deep our issues are and how deeply we need to construct a new politics. I call it a constituency for change to be able to begin addressing the issues that we're facing in this country, from K-12 education to the inability of people to afford higher education, to finally fixing our healthcare system so it actually works for most Americans, to driving an economy that's got a broad-based economic growth for everybody. And it's a privilege of a lifetime to be in a position to run for this job. I never thought I'd have that opportunity. I'm a little late. I should have mentioned this. I'm a little late, as you may have noticed. Maybe I'm early here, though. I don't know how many of these candidates have come through this living room. But I'm a little late because just as I was getting ready to announce, I got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And at first my reaction was, oh, that's terrible. I'm not going to be able to run. And also it's terrible because I diagnosed cancer. But I was able, within 5 weeks, to be operated on and declared cancer-free. And throughout that entire process, I thought to myself, what it would mean if I didn't have primary care, and I didn't have a doctor who was able to see that this was wrong with me. I felt perfectly fine, but if I hadn't had that happen, I'd be standing here today with cancer in my body and not knowing it, getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And then I thought about what would it mean if I didn't have insurance. It cost $53,000 this operation. I think my family paid $1,800 for it. Imagine being a family through no fault of your own that lives in the richest country in the world, the most industrial, and is the only country in the world that's industrialized that doesn't have universal coverage for everybody. And this is stuff we need to not just fight for, we need to win on behalf of the American people. So I apologize for going on so long. Usually half that long. And can attest to it. She starts to get into hair eyeball back. But so let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm happy to talk about anything.
The economics of the situation have just made me, people that go back and understand this stuff, the minimum wage now would be about $24. If it is kept up with productivity and with inflation, you know, from about 1980. And nobody brings this up. I mean, the people like Trump have to be laughing at these people that are voting for him. I mean, they probably look at the workers like, like the old Jim Crow South looked at African Americans. And I just don't see how that can go on. But how do you bring something like that out? We've really given the productivity coefficient to the richest people.
Right.
You know, I mean, they've got it all, and to me, that would be a deal breaker. Anybody could bring that up.
Yeah, if you look at charts, you see in the 80s basically, you see wages and productivity going like this for decades in America, just like this together. And then in the mid-80s, wages go like this, and that's what they've been ever since then. Productivity is continued to go like that, and all of that whole gap has gone to the people at the very top.
So we're going to trickle down.
And that's what they say. I mean, I obviously support an increase in the minimum wage, but I think we need to go beyond that. I think we need to have a very substantial increase in the child tax credit, which I proposed with Sherrod Brown, called the American Family Act, that would give families for each kid $3,000 over the course of the year, paid out on a monthly basis. It would reduce childhood poverty in this country by 40%. And by the way, it costs only 3% of what Medicare for All costs, and it's much less expensive than the tax cut the president gave to the wealthy in this country. And I think we should also increase the earned income tax credit substantially. Just those two things. If we reverse the Trump tax cut and we did those two things, now you're in a world of trickle-up economics, not trickle-down economics. And people for whom $300 a month per kid, or $600 for 2 kids, or $300, all of a sudden they are out in our economy buying health care, buying early childhood education, buying housing, contributing to broad-based economic growth. And that is exactly the opposite of supply-side economics. The two great lies over the last 30 years have been, one, that it will trickle down, and the other, that these tax cuts will pay for themselves. Neither is ever true. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I go to quite
I try to go boy, girl, boy, girl.
I go to quite a few of these, and it always occurs to me that I'm hearing what I like to hear, but that the speaker is speaking to the choir. How do we talk to people that just don't understand any of that stuff at all? You know, my father and mother were Republicans, and I'm a Republican. Yeah. I'm married to a woman.
Yeah.
How do I speak to her?
You brought her here. Look, I mentioned earlier that I represented a state that's a third. And I'm on the Ag Committee. I've been on the Ag Committee for 10 years. When I went back there, Harry Reid was still the leader of the Democrat. And my first committee I had was the Ag, because my senior senator, then a wonderful guy named Mark Udall, wasn't on it. And agriculture is so important to my state, just as it is to this state. And that has put me in counties where I will never win more than 30% of the vote, no matter what I do, or 35% of the vote, over and over and over again. But when I'm in those places, the conversations I'm having are about health care, about climate change. When we were passing the Affordable Care Act in 2010, I was up for election. That was a brutal year to be a Democrat running for election. Brutal. Only 3 of us survived to hold on to the majority in the Senate. And instead of hiding in Denver, I went out to the Eastern Plains of Colorado, and I said, look, here's why I'm voting for the Affordable Care Act. Here's why I think it will help you. And today, I'm standing here as a candidate saying, you know what, instead of Medicare for all, which I've got reasons why I've got a critique for it, I think we should do something which I've called Medicare X, which is a true public option. And my bill is written in such a way that actually starts in rural areas in this country, places where there's only one or no insured, and then over 3 years it migrates into the rest of the world and everybody, or the rest of America, and everybody can buy it. But the reason I started in rural America was I was trying to break the divide between people who say, you know, we need Medicare for all, and people who say anything you do on healthcare is a Bolshevik takeover of the United States. Now, it is, well, I don't know if you guys get that, I get that all the time. It is hard to deal with the fact that our system is corrupted today by Fox News and by these billionaires. That's difficult. Reaching people in face-to-face and things like this and saying, you know, can we all agree that we should have universal health care for everybody, that we need everybody to be covered? Can we agree that American families are spending much too much on health care? Not just preaching to the choir, I'm talking about people that are Republicans. Can we agree that we've got to maintain the quality we have and enhance it where we can? I think that's doable. And I think the Democrats need to be people that are paying attention to what policy proposals can we make that would be appealing to a large swath of the American people, instead of having people feel like these policies are created in petri dishes in Washington, D.C. by politicians and then put out to the American people. I'll give you another example. My farmers and ranchers in Colorado are getting killed because it's hard to believe that here. We had a terrible field here. But engaging, you know, is not the same thing as engaging with other Americans. We have to find a way. So if I were elected, one of the first things I would do is take the economics of the Trump tax plan versus the plan that I described earlier and go to rural America and say, this is why this is going to be a lot better for you. And here's what the math says. And challenge the Fox hosts to show up and come with their math and show that we're not right. Because the guy has lied about everything. And it can be exposed. But it needs to be done, I think, in a way where people don't feel like it's just a screaming match between politicians. It's somebody who's actually trying to engage the American people where they are. We don't do that. We don't do it. We've forgotten how to do it. Yes.
All right. My name is Jill Shudak. I'm the vice chair here at Pottawattamie County Democrats.
Thank
and I'm
you.
also running for school board.
Oh,
Yay. Yay.
because the pay is so good. Right? Yeah.
Right?
Good luck when you win or when you lose.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure, no problem. I feel that our state, and not only the state of Iowa, but many states around the country are under attack on two different fronts. One, our public education system, and the unions. As a president, what would you do to help strengthen unions and bring those unions back into our communities? And what are we going to do to help funding of the public education school systems, right? One of your opponents, Cory Booker, was on this morning on CNN, and you know he's a big person with vouchers and charter schools and things of that nature. I believe in public education. What's your stance on that?
Well, first of all, I don't think Cory Booker is my opponent. I think of him as my friend. He is my friend. He's a great guy. If you ever get a chance to meet him, you should meet him. He's smart as hell and much better speaker than I will ever be. On the union stuff, I mean, to say talk about that first, and then I'll talk about K-12 education. You know, I'm aware of what's happened in Iowa, and it's disgraceful what's happening here, and people are making decisions to leave the profession of teaching after 32 years because, you know, they no longer have the kind of protections that they had before Governor Branstad did what he did to the collective bargaining in the state. And years ago, I know trade was made between the union and the state. It wasn't honored by what Branstad did. That's been true in these Midwest states. They do. You're right. It's the ALEC stuff. That's exactly what it is. And we need to fight back on that. I think more broadly in our economy, in the private sector, we're down to about 7% union membership, and that's coincided with the long slide that we've seen in real wages in the United States of America. And I think we should be looking for ways to develop a new relationship between capital and labor that is focused on how you drive wages up in this economy. And that's going to take cooperation from both sides, and it's going to take some vision from both sides to be able to do that. I think in the most successful collective bargaining relationships, that's what you see. So our host Steve is a firefighter, but tired of what I was saying. But you just have to steal some stuff. The best collective bargaining relationship I ever had was with the firefighters in Denver. The firefighters came in. I was chief of staff to the mayor then. He's a guy named John Hickenlooper. You may have heard of that guy. And they said we were in a budget crisis, and they came in and said to me, Michael, we detect you're in a budget crisis. And I said, we were new, we just come in. And I said, that is true, we are in a budget crisis. They said, we can help you fix it. And I said, yep, you can. And in 45 minutes, we agreed on what the terms were going to be. We then had collective bargaining negotiations for 6 weeks to achieve the terms we said we were going to achieve. And because they were so strong politically, because the public loved them, and because their membership loved them, they were willing to be strategic about taking it a little bit in the moment to get a benefit later. And that, I think, requires confidence on both sides of the bargaining table. That's when collective bargaining works really well. When people are not confident, it's terrible because everybody goes to their corners and to their lowest common denominator position. So I think, look, in our quest for better citizenship from everybody in this country to overcome a Donald Trump politics, this, I think, is part of it, including, having a section of organized labor. Plus, we have all these new industries and new jobs and new kinds of, part-time work and other things where people don't have pensions, they don't have retirements, and they are stuck between states because there's no mobility. Those are all big ideas that we need to find a way to address together. On education, what I would say is that, like many other things where our parents and grandparents used to make an investment in us, for a variety of reasons, we're not doing that anymore. I know that Iowa has recently slightly increased the K-12 budget, but I don't think that budget or the higher ed budget looks anything like it did a generation ago in terms of, the needs of this economy. At the federal level, we've done the same thing. We have cut domestic discretionary spending, which is education, transportation, agriculture, Interior Department, all that stuff, we've cut by 35% since 1980 when Ronald Reagan was president, in the name of budget deficit. Well, what we're doing to the next generation is, on the one hand, we're not investing in them the way our parents and grandparents did, and on the other, we're sticking them with $20 trillion, going to $30 trillion of debt because we're not dealing comprehensively with that problem. So from the perspective of the next generation, it's sort of the worst of all possible worlds. We need to start investing again in this country. And public education is one of those things. We have spent, since 2001, $5 trillion cutting taxes mostly for wealthy people in this country. $5 trillion. We have spent $5.6 trillion in the Middle East. Donald Trump says it's 7, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. That is 12 or 13 trillion dollars that we might as well have lit on fire when it comes to investments in our country. Investments in that economy where we want to drive economic mobility, or into our education system. For that money, you could fix every failing road and bridge in this country. You could have fixed every airport infrastructure project that we're behind on, which is every airport infrastructure project in the country. You could have fixed our electrical grid so it could have engaged well at 21st century. You could have given, if you wanted to, every kid in America preschool education. If you wanted to, you could give every teacher in America a 50% raise. You could have made Social Security solvent. And we did none of those things. We incinerated that money from the perspective of the next generation. So when people say we have no money, on some level it's true, but on another level it's because we've been funding the wrong priorities. And we haven't been investing in communities like this community. Now I will say, I'll stop because unless other people are interested in it, I do think we have to change the way we deliver K-12 There's a lot we have to do to change it because it belongs to a centuries-old design that is not working well enough for the kids in the 21st century. And one place we could start is changing the way we pay teachers, because the way we pay teachers is based on our having a labor market that discriminated against women and said, you got two choices. One is being a teacher and one's being a nurse. And if you don't want to go to the hospital or you don't like blood, actually that's not true. There's probably more blood at the school. But if you don't, you want to be a teacher, we'll take you and you can teach ninth grade British literature in our school district, and we're going to expect that you're going to teach Julius Caesar every year for 30 years of your life, which of course you won't do anymore because people are going to ask you to do other stuff. And then we pay you this ridiculously low current compensation because the only other job you could get was being a nurse, but we'll give you a pension, which sounded pretty good because your spouse would probably die before you did, but now you know that we're not actually funding that pension anymore. That's how we're spending 80% of the money we're spending on K-12 education. That's a tough challenge because the federal government's only 9% of what we spend, but it does mean we need a president, I think, to help work with state and local communities to say, we gotta offer our kids something better, man. We're still running this agrarian calendar, I say that knowing I'm in Iowa, this agrarian calendar when we knew that kids needed to be in the fields in the summertime, when our kids today need something different than that. And by the way, our kids, well, I'll stop there, but that's some idea about what we need to do. These are profound things. These are not little things that need to be addressed. These are massive things. I don't want to fight between the two of you, so I'm going to...
Will you raise your hand?
Go ahead.
So a common thread here, really, whether we're talking about the environment or women's health or healthcare in general, or education, really is money, is companies essentially owning our democracy to a certain extent and buying laws or regulations or lack thereof that really are great for their bottom line and just do horrendous damage to the rest of the American people. So what is it that needs to happen in order to change that so the American people become citizens as opposed to simply consumers?
Right. I think so. Yeah, you're
That was going to be along the lines of my question. I feel like campaign finance is broken. I may be woefully undereducated on the topic, but
certainly not.
when you have senators, present company excluded, of course,
Thank you.
bought and sold by mega corporations, it's no surprise to anyone that legislation is written up to favor the corporate structures. So, do you agree that campaign finance is broken?
So first, let me say I mentioned earlier that I thought Donald Trump was very much a symptom of our issues, and one of those issues is that people believe that Washington, and let me be even more explicit, Congress, which I'm a member, are working on everything except their priorities. And you know what? They are right about that. That is not a mistake. And so when I go out into my state and I ask people, Donald Trump did not win Colorado, but he came with 4 points. I ask people, well, tell me why you voted for Donald Trump. And the response is almost always the same, which is, I wanted to blow the place up. To which I say, congratulations, you achieved your objective. Now what are we going to do on the back end of this? Because we got to do something for our kids, we got to do something for climate, our role in the world, and I think one of the things we have to recognize is when they say they wanted to blow the place up, and a lot of Democrats who feel this way too, not for Trump, but who say, those guys are working on everything except what I care about. And the reason we're working on everything except what they care about is because of the kind of special interests that you're talking about. And also fear of the cable television, fear of being called out by social media people. I got this morning, they, on Meet the Press, if you go back and watch it, you'll see me being attacked by a Democratic-leaning group on judges. And I'm going to let you watch the answer and evaluate what you have to say. But that was a crystalline moment in terms of what we're trying to deal with. And, in a world where Twitter doesn't even run Twitter by Twitter, we're going to be in a world of hurt if we continue to run our political system by Twitter. So there's a little bit of a lot of things going on. The campaign finance system is a disaster. And Citizens United was the heart of all of that, because it basically took a line of cases that the Supreme Court had been deciding since about 1973 and essentially opened the floodgates so that billionaires could invest as much as they wanted into our political system, often without telling anybody who they were. And it's still, I mean, the way this system's designed today, based on how Congress legislated it and how the Supreme Court amended it, is if you're a human, you're limited in what you can give to a politician, because they said, well, if you give me money and I go write a bill that's consistent with what you think, it might create appearance of corruption, and so we'll limit it for individuals. But because these super PACs are independent, only in the minds of the Supreme Court could they be independent. I mean, look at these super PACs are run by former staff members of senators. They're run by brothers and sisters and wives, and husbands of members of Congress. They're not independent, but the Supreme Court said because they are, they will not give the American people a sense that their system is corrupt, and therefore people can give whatever amount of money they want. And of course, 94% of the American people say one of the major problems with our political system is there's too much freaking money in it. It's obvious. There is not a person in Colorado who has ever said to me, the problem with our political system is there's not enough money in it. But that is the Supreme Court's position, so that's why we need to overcome that, I think, by overturning Citizens United, by passing the Disclose Act, which would require disclosure for any contribution made to anybody in America. Of course, Mitch McConnell, there's more chance of him going to live in a commune someplace than there is in him allowing this kind of campaign. It's true, and by the way, that's the only way he would go live in a commune is if he thought somehow he'd get more judges for Donald Trump as a result of going there. But we have to fix that. But beyond that, to come back to your other point, our economy has evolved so much. Steve and I were just talking about it this morning. I mean, you have these tech companies that are dominating, our economy in many ways. They've been disruptive for good and for bad, and, we have to sort our way through that. But one of the things that's happened is we find ourselves in a place where those folks are paying actually relatively low taxes, because even though their market capitalizations are huge and they're the most dominant companies in our country today, they don't actually hire a lot of people. GM, who employs many fewer people than it used to, but still employs a lot of people compared to those high-tech companies, they're paying a lot of taxes because they're paying a payroll tax. So here we are, basically negatively incentivizing people that are hiring folks in this country and paying a wage in this country, and giving people that aren't actually hiring people or paying them a good wage preferred tax treatment. That makes no sense to me, and that's something we could fix. And it's the kind of thing that Americans in earlier eras going back to Teddy Roosevelt's progressive era were able to do. And I think we're at another one of those inflection points, where we got a whole bunch of things that have sort of piled up on each other for a long time, including an economy that only works for the people at the top, including the folks that have great lobbying in Washington, that we have to fix with a real progressive agenda to deal with campaign finance, to end gerrymandering. We got to end political gerrymandering in this country. Yeah. We will not. The only way to get past the Freedom Caucus is to do that and to put ourselves in a position where people get to pick politicians instead of letting politicians pick who their people are.
How's that coming out of the Supreme Court for gerrymandering?
I don't know how it will. We'll have to see. But Congress can do something about this. And I have the bill in the Senate to end political gerrymandering. The last point on corruption that I make this morning is, for years I had a bill that would ban members. If you had the privilege of being in the House or being in the Senate, my bill says you should accept a lifetime ban on your ever becoming a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. That it's the least you do, because people have a sense that we go there to get rich. I don't actually think most people do, but I do know this. Over half the people that leave the Congress that don't retire become lobbyists in Washington, D.C. And that gives people a sense of, how independent are you going to be if you're worried about how you're going to be hired? Do I think that's the biggest problem in America today? No. Do I think if we passed something like that, that America would say, thank God they're starting to listen to what we have to say? I think they would. I can take 2 or 3 more. Is that okay? I never know when it's really the last question or the right.
Mine relates to money also. Just wondering what you might suggest for dealing with the student debt load.
This, I would say, is the #1 question I get. This and healthcare when I travel my state of Colorado. And let's first ask yourselves, why are we in the situation that we're now? In my state, if you go to the University of Colorado, on average, it's going to take you at least 22 years to pay back your student loan. So here are kids who are going to not start small businesses they would have otherwise started, not teach because the last thing they could afford to do is teach because of that student loan, who can't buy a home because of that student loan. I know it's different in different parts of the country, but those are hugely challenging issues in my state. And why are they in that position? They're in that position because we have rolled up the carpet on them. We have not funded education in the way we could because we've been spending that $12 trillion doing other stuff. And the student loan program in Washington does nothing to incentivize colleges to keep prices low. So for people going to college today, it's the worst of all possible worlds. Public support is plummeting like this when, 30 years ago, if you were going to CU, your college tuition was paid for by the taxpayer. Today, it's paid for by you. Going like this, prices are going like this, and student loan program says, okay, you went up 3% this year, we'll lend into that. You went up 5% this year, we'll lend into that, and pretty soon you got 22 years worth of debt or more than that. So I think we have to work with students that are coming up. My objective would be to have people graduate from college debt-free. And that's going to require states and universities and the federal government to work together to decide that that's going to be our goal, and either through combination of keeping prices down, work study, and other kinds of things, we're going to be able to get kids to a place where they don't have to have debt when they leave, or much debt when they leave. Second, I do think there's something we have to do for people who have already gone through the system and are struggling with the student debt that they have. And I know people say, well, they're just a bunch of deadbeats. You can't do. Listen, these folks are facing something different than any American generation has ever faced. It is a lack of attention, a great amount of inattention from policymakers, and we have to find some way of doing it. And I think I've long supported ideas for teachers who are teaching in rural communities or in high poverty urban school districts about either deferring or actually, getting rid of the debt they have if they're willing to teach in high needs areas. I think we could apply those ideas to lots of people that are doing lots of things to provide service to the American people. But I think we need to do more than that. And one of the things I love about this Democratic field is there are a whole bunch of different ideas there that we're going to have the opportunity to debate and think about over the next 18 months. I would say one last piece on this. 70% of the people that graduate from high school don't go on to a 4-year college. And some of those folks aren't going because they're priced out of it. We should fix that. Some of those folks aren't going because our K-12 system hasn't prepared them to go to college. We should fix that. I hear people say to me all the time, Michael, don't you know not everybody's going to go to college? And I say, yeah, but I stipulate to that. But too often, it's really not the kid's choice. It's the choice that's been made for them because they haven't been prepared. I can't think of anything more violence with who we are as Americans than the idea that if you're born poor in this country, your chances of graduating with a college degree or its equivalent are roughly 9 in 100. Think about that. 9 in 100. I mean, that means 91 of those kids are constrained to the margin of the economy through no fault of their own. So that's something we need to work on. But those 70% of kids, they need to be getting an education and acquiring skills that takes them from making this at retail to making this doing something else. And our whole system is designed to do that in America isn't working very well. And I think that's an area where we spend a lot of time or a lot of attention and see how we improve results for the people of this country and for our economy.
study program was called GI Bill.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, my question is, does Congress plan to do anything about foreign actor interference with our elections? After what we saw.
Yeah, not this president of ours who, had a conversation with Vladimir this week, and which led him to do two things. One, not reference what you just referenced, not say to Putin, you better not do this again, but also then led him to call Mueller investigation a Russian hoax, which is also what he said to Putin. I really don't understand. If we had more time today, you guys could explain this to me, because you could explain to me why folks that like Steve King want to have a president who spends his time playing patsy with dictators in this world instead of supporting, democracies in this world. I don't understand it. I mean, Putin is running a kleptocracy in Russia, and in North Korea, where Trump's saying this week, oh, he's my friend. I know he won't do anything harmful to their economy. He don't want to harmful to their economy. People are starving to death in North Korea. We were much better in 2018 than we were in 2016 in terms of protecting ourselves from Russian interference. That means we're home free in 2020. Let's try to do it again, and we need to do everything we can to stop it. I've recently gone on the Intelligence Committee, which gave me the opportunity to understand some of this stuff, and I have some sense of the vulnerabilities, and they're going to keep trying and trying and trying. And it would be nice to have a president who actually put Russia on warning and joined our allies in Europe who are incredibly vulnerable to this stuff. And if you're in a small country dealing with Russian propaganda like the stuff these guys are, I've met with a whole bunch of ambassadors from European countries who come in and say Russia's destabilizing our democracy. Russia is supporting right-wing, candidates in our countries, and they were involved in the Brexit stuff. So Congress needs to be vigilant. We need to make sure Republican members of Congress are on record saying this is an important thing for us to do, and the facts are real. The President of the United States is the only human on this planet of however many billions of people we have who still think the Russians did interfere. There might have been some teenager on the couch somewhere that did this. By the way, this is a little off point, but I keep on my desk at home and my desk in the office a book of the Russian propaganda that they ran in our 2016 election that I compiled, and it is filled with hatred. Hatred about hatred of immigrants and support for immigrants. Hatred of police officers and support for Black Lives Matter. Hatred of every kind of lifestyle there is and support for that lifestyle. Because what they were trying to do was divide us. And we should ask ourselves, this is why it's on my desk, why for a year we could not recognize this Russian propaganda as distinct from our own political vocabulary. But we couldn't for a year. And that says something about how terrible our political vocabulary is when we can't see this racist propaganda and this divisive propaganda. They see it as a fundamental weakness. And Donald Trump sees it as a fundamental weakness, or at least a strength for him to divide the American people. Our great strength, we've never done it perfectly, and at times we've been terrible at it, but over many generations we have fought to make this country more democratic, more fair, and more free. And that is the general direction we've headed, and a lot of that has been because we have embraced pluralism as a strength. And this president doesn't, Vladimir Putin doesn't, but there are people all over the world that want to be as free as people are here, and they need the United States to be an example. Those people are just like my grandparents and my mom, who were Polish Jews who survived the Holocaust, spent 2 years in Warsaw behind the Iron Curtain, then went to Stockholm, to Mexico City, and finally came to the United States, where they rebuilt their lives, were utterly shattered by the Nazis in World War II. And I've been all over my state over and over and over again. I get a lot of people in my state that have thick accents of one kind or another. None are thicker than the accents my grandparents had, and they were the greatest patriots I've ever known. We got to get back to that. And we do need to make this administration the aberration that it is. All right, folks, I'm going to be really quick, okay? I'm just gonna trust everybody, I'm gonna go, start here and go around and we're done.
Senator, I'm a farmer, and, and I'm kind of an unusual farmer. I support trade unions because people have to have money to buy my product, you know, like cattle. And there, the German Catholic neighborhood that I live in, or what I call home, and my son lived in my grandparents' house. There were 5 members of the class of 1970 at St. Albert's High School here in Celeste, in that neighborhood. And today, the only full-time farmer in that neighborhood is my son. Now you move out further, and it's the same except for one family. And I joke, they're in Harrison County, we're close to the Harrison County. Steve King's country begins at the Harrison. I have a farm that the north, it's on the boundary. Yeah. So I'd like to drive on the wrong side of the road up the hill, but I don't. Anyway, I always joke with my boyhood best friend who lives on the other side of this family that I have to have a passport to get through. But that is, I'm concerned that this Republican Party is more organized than we think.
Amen.
Oleg Deripaska, $200 million plant, aluminum plant in Kentucky. I thought Mitch has been compromised since Merrick Garland. Why did the first response to the death of Antonin Scalia from the Republican Party be, we will not confirm?
Right.
You know, they could have went through the motions, but they didn't. But I understand that people live paycheck to paycheck. I've talked to bankers. One says, well, these people pay overdraft fees. And, you know, they could arrange a small kind of credit. If they paid it off every month, they just have a nominal amount of interest. But they just use it, fill it up, and then go on. Another one at a much larger bank, he had graphs, pretty on charts of graphs. One was annual, one was monthly. That is a problem. You know, it goes back to that income disparity.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm a farmer, but I want my product, you know. And at the same time, you know, farmers, they make fun of people who have food assistance. And sometimes there are people that have both parents working and still off. Something's wrong.
Well, I'm not gonna unpack every single.
You bet.
Yeah, you got good, it's a lot of good stuff. I would say on the Merrick Garland piece of this, that in the 10 years that I've been there, that's the most unforgivable thing that's happened in the Senate. And that is what happens when you get into a world where what you can get away with becomes the norm of your behavior, and not the idea that what goes around comes around, so maybe you should show some restraint. And I think on that one, I hate to say it, but I believe it's true, that Merrick Garland, or that McConnell elected Donald Trump by keeping that vacancy open, and he rallied the Republican base.
Well, I'm an unusual farmer. I realize that, you know, I have a market news service for commodity markets. It started over in Nebraska. So that's the first thing. That when I saw my computer, it comes up. I find out an awful lot of things that happen in an awful lot of places. Then I have the Washington Post and New York Times.
You are an unusual.
So I don't want to go down. But
All right, can I finish off?
you bet.
All right, let me just take these last three and I'm out of here. Yes.
Okay, so I think for me, it's an important president is that her character is like one of the best in the country. So for you, what is one life experience that you had that is you look back and say that really shaped my character in a way that will therefore help you be the best president that you can give tonight?
I would say I'll give you a couple. One was my family. I mentioned my mom and her parents. When I was in the second grade, we were asked to line up in the classroom from whose family was here the shortest period of time and whose family was here the longest period of time. And I was the answer to both questions, because my mom had been here less than 20 years as an immigrant, a Jewish immigrant from after World War II. My dad's family could trace their lineage all the way back to the Mayflower, which, by the way, was not a bunch of rich people coming over from England. It was a bunch of people escaping from religious persecution. And my dad became a public servant. He actually worked on Capitol Hill. He worked for senators and did other things like that. And he gave me a real sense that public service was noble, and that it was really important for us to, as a community of Americans, to each make a contribution to making people's lives better. My mom's family was a little bit the story I was just telling, which is the only thing they had was themselves, and they came here with nothing. They were able to start their business again here in the United States. They sold art, and they paid for my college education, and they paid for my brother and sister's college education. And as a result of what, not the family that came from the Mayflower, the immigrant family paid for it. And as a result of what they did, I've had every benefit America could bestow on anybody. So I'll give you and that makes me feel like I've got an obligation to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to ensure that my kids and the kids in the Denver public schools and all the state of Iowa are not left with a less opportunity, but actually have more. That's what drives me. And now I was in a successful business, making a really good living, and I left that job to go work for the city and county of Denver, and ultimately to be superintendent of Denver Public Schools, where I feel like I came face to face with America and the inequities that we have in this country, and the injustices that exist between kids that live in more affluent neighborhoods and kids that live in the poorest neighborhoods in America. And that changed me as a human, changed me as an American, made me realize, as I saw us make progress with kids in our district and make progress with schools, and take a district that had been flat on its back and cutting budgets every year into one where it was the fastest growing school district in America, and 60% more kids were graduating and going to college than they were 10 years before. That filled me with hope about what's possible, but it's not easy, and it's not going to ever be by people who are content just not achieving a result and then blaming the other side because they didn't achieve that result. And the kids that are in the Denver public schools today that are going there on Monday, including those kids, don't have time for us to continue to do the politics the way we're doing our politics. Which is why I say this isn't just about beating Trump. It's about how we come together again as citizens. And people say to me, "God, I'm so tired. I don't know. It feels so depressing." You have the Koch brothers on one hand, you got the campaign finance on the other, you got the lobbyists on the other, everything else. I say to people, if you need inspiration, just think about the kids that are going to school today. And it might not even be a very good school where they're shifting their backpack to make some room for their books, or they're teaching their kids to learn, and with an expectation that they're going to have more opportunity than grandparents have. They have hard to do, and they cannot fix our fiscal problems. They cannot fix our immigration issues. They cannot, because they're trying to do their work as students, and it's on their behalf. I think I'm working every single day, including today. This is why I brought my family to Colorado to be here. It's a common in America to say, and this is true. It's actually true. It's a commonplace to say anybody ought to be president. And that's been true since Abraham Lincoln was president and Barack Obama was president. But I thought about that a lot as a school superintendent, and kids were going to schools that should have been. And I wondered whether we might be better off thinking of those kids not as future presidents, but as future founders. Just like the people who wrote the Constitution were founders of the United States. The way Frederick Douglass, who fought slavery in his lifetime as somebody who had been a slave, was an escapee and helped end slavery in his lifetime. The suffragettes who got the right to vote in this country against all odds. I think of all those people as just like the people who wrote the Constitution, and that's how I think about the kids in my old district, because it's going to be their country someday, and whether they do it well or not depends on how well we do for them. And that's why I think, is that when we think of ourselves as citizens, which is how we should think of ourselves in this democratic republic, we need to think of ourselves as founders. Think of how elevated that sounds compared to being here. That becomes about going out and voting once a year. It becomes about making sure your friends and neighbors also vote. Making sure that people across the country aren't denying other people the right to vote, or to collectively bargain. It means we're fighting for an economy that's actually to live the next generation. We've got to lift up our game. It is a disgrace that Donald Trump was elected president. That should never, ever have happened. And the carelessness that it reflects is something we should understand and not allow to happen again. By the way, these judges that he's putting on these courts, none of those people are ever going to enforce the kind of stuff that you're talking about.
Your first statement was about repealing the Trump tax cut.
Yes.
You're going to be seen as a tax and spend Democrat.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, that'll be seen as a tax increase.
Yeah.
Kansas, the Republican Party, decreased taxes, put into an insolvency situation. Well, then the Republicans, even though they were embarrassed about it, had to raise taxes. Now, I love the $2 trillion on the infrastructure, but how are we going to make the Republicans be the ones that raise the taxes? I agree. The Freedom Party doesn't care. Fox News doesn't. Honestly, my siblings don't care. They will not.
We can't just jump to the. We have to say, here's the situation. $5 trillion and $5 trillion speech, but that is something the American people don't know. They don't know that that's how we spent $12 or $13 trillion. They know that when Bill left the White House, he had a $5 trillion projected surplus, and then Bush came in and he went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, cut taxes in 2001, 2003. By the way, 2003 was after we had invaded Iraq.
Right.
Right? After.
Yeah.
He didn't, not only did he say, you this war. He said, I'm going to cut your taxes on people to Iraq to fight this war. And then he put in Medicare Part D at the end, which he didn't pay for.
Right.
And then he cratered the economy because of lack of regulation.
How are you going to get Republicans be the ones
We
that are?
here's what I think we need to do. We need to tell that story. Again, let me just finish with it.
Yeah.
Morocco comes in. They all say he's a socialist because he's got a $1.5 trillion deficit that he did not create. By the time he leaves, it's less than half that. It takes them a year. This is unbelievable. You will appreciate this. It's because I know how much of the stuff you've heard at the state legislature. It takes them a year. In my office, I keep a chart of the unemployment rate and our deficits. Over history, they have always gone like this. Always.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the unemployment rate is this.
Yeah.
Our deficit is going like this. Do you know how hard that is to do? How irresponsible you have to be to achieve that? And I guess what I would say is this: our Democrats, who say this don't matter. I don't have time to make a position. I actually disagree with that. I think that $30 trillion in debt is going to be a massive constriction of her choice, of her ability to decide when she's run for president what she's going to do. But you can't keep going this way. And don't wait, Ross.
Don't wait.
But when you have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican majority House achieve this, you need to hold their feet to the fire, not say it don't matter, because that's a permission slip for what they've done. And too many of my colleagues are saying that, and it frustrates me. And the American people are agitated about this. I mean, we're spending less than 16% of our GDP, collecting less than 16% of our GDP in revenue, and we're spending more. And then McConnell says, after he's done all of this, he says, well, we better cut Medicare, we better cut Medicaid, we better cut Social Security,
everything.
and we need an answer to that. One last one, and I'm out of here.
Thank you.
And
You need to go on Fox News and educate some folks.
I went on Fox News and I made this point, and she said, "Reno said, oh, well, don't you think the economy's well? I'm talking about this, I'm doing all this stuff." And then one day Donald Trump said, well, I had to invest in defense. That's why the deficit's going up. But I felt actually a slight moral victory because I thought it might possible in his 23-hour binge watching of Fox News, he might have seen that moment. Yes.
For real.
This is it. We're out.
Thank you. I'm Lisa. The ACLU Rights for All program. And you mentioned to vote. There's a lot of people who aren't able to vote, either demographic or mobility wise, and other reasons. What would you do as president to make sure everyone's able to vote?
I would say this, I think the steps that are taken to make sure that people pay their price to society, they get on the voter rolls is an important thing to do. In states where people are trying to take away vote, like reducing, things like Sunday voting, and we should stop it. Colorado, on per se, has the second highest participation rate of any state in the country in terms of voting. I learned the other day because my pal Amy Klobuchar said it, that Minnesota is number one, and we're going to go catch up. But even in our state, it's only 62%. And we gotta work hard to make sure that one of the reasons why voting is something that in Colorado we do pretty well is that we have early voting. Everybody gets a mail ballot, and I used to love going to the polling place. Now I filled out, I just filled out our ballot yesterday, sitting at the kitchen table. Helena is going to get to fill out her first ballot this weekend. All right, let me have those. Can I have those? I want to give our host a present on the way out of here. I didn't know what your professions were before but these are two books that I've been giving to people that I think this is my guy named David White, we just on the post. The other one is we call it about housing and how damaged our houses are. That also one is, and I hope you guys will be sure.